Hello everyone, welcome to the channel. This is English Custom Woodworking. Here I have my lathe. This belonged to my grandpa and my dad before me, and I don't really know a whole lot about it, but I want to clean it up and get it working. I have had a few people ask me for some turning work recently, and I have to admit, I've told them yes, I do have a lathe, but I'm a pure amateur on a lathe. I know the basics and I've done the basics. But also on top of that, I don't even know if this is in good working order. So about a week ago, I kind of started tearing into this thing to find out if I could get it to work enough to turn some stuff. So let's dive into this thing and I'll show you some of the stuff that I have found, some of the stuff I'm going to have to fix, and maybe we can turn something and do a small project. So to start out with, this is an indirect drive lathe, meaning that it is driven by a pulley. There is a motor back here behind this shield, which needs some serious love. This is a Craftsman brand, and I cleaned off the plate just enough. It is 110, and it's a 3rd horsepower split phase motor, 6 amps. Actually, I correct myself, it's 115 volt, not 110. And max RPMs are 1725. There is a model number 113.12110. So that's about all I know. The cover for this upper pulley has a Craftsman brand logo on it, and then there is a stamp on the bottom down here. You can see it, and it says Sears Roebuck and Company, Simpsons, Sears Limited, model number 113.23881. So in the process of taking this thing apart and kind of figuring some stuff out, I turned it on, and switch works, the motor works, the bearings are actually pretty smooth. There is a upper pulley that goes on this shaft, which I have taken off, and there is a belt that drives here, and then this cover protects this up here. Don't get your hands in it for safety. But one thing, the main thing that I've noticed, which is what I originally took off to fix, and it kind of led to a few other things, is when this spun, there was a kind of a ratcheting sound. This is obviously pretty smooth. Bearing sounds good, but there was a ratcheting sound. So during investigation, basically I found there is a motor lock. This is a spring loaded pin, and it's got some little ears on it, so if you can hold it out or let it go in. If you let it go in, it pushes the pin through here. You can kind of see it right there, and that pin, if I can pull this back off, will set into these little grooves, and it will basically lock the drive and lock the motor, or lock this upper portion, not lock the motor, I'm sorry, lock this upper portion. And then I'm assuming you can do that so you can get your whatever tips that you want to have on your shaft here, you can get them in and out. This did have a tip in it that I wasn't sure actually how some of this stuff worked. I kind of had to figure it out. I thought that the tip that was in it actually screwed into here, but it's just basically pushed in by force. It's kind of a wedge shape, tapered, basically gets pushed in by force, and then you turn this and tighten this, and it pushes it in to hold your work or your project that you're working on. So what I need to fix is I need to work on this here, the spacing, so whenever it spins when you're working, it's not ratcheting and it's not touching that lock back there, that motor lock, that pin lock. So I'm going to work on that, try to get that fixed, and then we'll go from there. So for what it's worth, I had a lot of trouble just trying to figure this out. I had to get some pullers and pull this off because it was stuck on there so tight, and it's still fairly snug. I smoothed up the burrs, some of the burrs on this with some sandpaper and a light filing, and it's a lot smoother. Put some grease on it. It's got a Allen key screw that goes in here that tightens to this flat spot to hold it in place, but that spacing is wrong, and because that spacing is wrong and there's a locking collar here and really the only point of that locking collar would be to keep it from coming out or to keep this at a set distance, and that's what I'm assuming is to keep it at a set distance away from this pin. But that distance is this, there's so much slop in this that it's not actually touching, so it's not holding it off of it. So this is a 3/4 shaft. I got my calipers out, and it's a 3/4 diameter shaft. So I went to the local hardware store and I bought some different 3/4 inch washers, but what I'm afraid is none of them are actually, I'm gonna have to test them, but most of them have a lot of slop, so I don't think that's gonna work. So I'm gonna have to figure something out as far as spacing goes. So I found some machine bushings that are 3/4 inch that have a little less slop, so I think that'll work. So now I basically need to figure out, get this locking collar set at the right spot, and then I need to get the pulley adjusted exactly at the right spot too. So I'm going to put a little bit of lubricant on here so I can pull this pulley on and off a little bit easier, and I can clean that off if I need to later. But putting it on and off right now, or taking it on and off right now, is kind of a little bit difficult because it's pretty snug. So also, one thing that I'm actually curious about, which I have no idea, is this wooden base cabinet that the lathe is sitting on. I don't know if this was factory, this is how this model came, or if my grandpa built this to put the lathe on. I would bet that this is actually how it came from the factory, but I'm not sure. And if anybody out there has a lathe like this that has a similar base, I'd really like to know, because I'd like to know whether this is factory or not. But it's pretty cool little cabinet. It's got a shelf down here on the bottom for some storage. This is kind of a contained area, because when you're doing lathe work, you're throwing chips everywhere, which this back corner of my shop is not exactly the best place to have this, because you're going to have chips all over the place. This is not going to catch them all. They're going to go flying everywhere. So you're going to create one heck of a mess. But down here in the end on the bottom, this is open, and somebody has modified, I don't know if it came factory like this, but there's a tray down here so you can sweep all your shavings down into here and use this as an area where you can clean up. That probably lifts up and off to throw away or dispose of your chips. Also, cleaning this area up, I didn't realize I knew that he had some tools, some woodworking or lathe turning stuff, but there's a variety of different stuff. It's pretty old. Most of this stuff says Craftsman. There's a few cheaper ones down here, lighter weight. You can tell that they're cheaper. The ones that are a little bit more solid and have the Craftsman mark on them are noticeably heavier, sturdier, sharper tools. There's a set of calipers that I found. Some old legs. I'm not sure where those came from. This is actually one of the coolest things that I found in here too. Is this hammer was down in here. Pretty neat old mallet. So let's get working. So if I push this all the way in, like such, it actually pushes this pin out, drives it out, so it's touching it a lot, making contact with it a lot. So I need to gauge a distance where
I'm trying to gauge how much to space the pulley on that shaft away from the locking pin.
So for what it's worth, this locking collar, the Allen screw is 5/32.
If I space it too far, then the locking pin won't engage because the set distance is too far away. I'm also trying to figure out what size spacers to use because some of them are too big and I'm afraid they're going to rub inside the pulley. Like this one here won't fit, won't sit in there right. So I know it's not going to work. This one sits in flush, so I can probably use it. But because the shaft is actually hidden behind that pulley, it's difficult to gauge how many of them that I need and how much I need. So I'm kind of having to do a trial and error session to figure out. Plus this shaft has a lot of slop in it. So I'm trying to figure out if there's any way for me to tighten up that shaft bushing to get the slop out of that shaft in the bearing that's inside. So here I'm trying to figure out, I'm still trying to figure out how to take that slop out of the drive shaft. I kind of tell myself in the back of my mind when I'm recording this that it's not as bad as what it was because I moved that locking collar, but that's not true. It's still as bad as it was. So it probably needs a new bearing inside there, but I'm not sure how to get that shaft out and get the bearing out. This rub here is from that large washer that I put in between the bushing and the bearing, so I'm having to take it out.
So this depth right here appears to be the right amount of shims or bearing or washers on the back side of that. Okay, so the pin right now is in the locking position. I can't spin it. I pull it out. It spins freely and doesn't touch. So I'm going to put my set screw back in here and we'll see how that works. It's making a ticking noise, but it's not making contact with the locking pin anymore. So I'm not sure where that ticking noise is coming from. It might be from those washers, spacers that I put in there. So this is in locking position now and I can't spin it at all, so that's working properly. So this has a collar on it also on this side. I don't know if that is a nut. I might try to see if I can get a spanner wrench to fit that. I don't know if I have one the right size for that hole. So you have two pulleys. You have a pulley on the motor shaft and you have a pulley on the drive shaft. They have different sizes on each one, which you can move the belt from a groove to another groove. The motor is on basically a gravity shaft back here, so I can lift it up, down to move my belt. And basically what you're doing, similar to riding a bike or mountain bike, and you're changing gears, you're changing the speed and the torque of the drive and the speed of your shaft. So you can move these back and forth to speed up or slow down what you're turning. So I noticed that there's a lot of slack in my belt if I want to use the more torque, slower slots on the pulley. There's a lot of slack. I don't even think that it'll spin this. If it does, it's probably just going to have a dangerous amount of slop. So basically what's happening is this motor lifts off these pivots here, and gravity, the weight of the motor going down, is what is holding tension on the belt. And my motor can go no further than where it's hitting here on the back side of this. So to use these slots down here, I'm going to have to do one of two things. Either get a belt that is shorter so it'll catch it before it touches, or I need to cut a groove out on the back side of that so the motor is able to fall further and hold weight. So let me think about it a second and figure out which one I want. So I'm going to measure this belt just in case. Best way I found to measure a belt: get a piece of string, pick a spot on the belt somewhere as a starting point, and then just work your way around, keeping your slack out of your string. one pass around. I'm going to hold my string on the edge of this table and make a mark right here. So that belt is roughly 30 and a half, and I think I could go with 25 or 26 inch, and I think that would probably work. Okay, so I ran to the auto parts store real quick, and they didn't have a very good selection, but I kind of wanted to do the shorter belt first to try before I start chiseling away on the back of that. So once again, using this on the two larger pulleys works fine. So it just kind of depends on what speed you're wanting. Let's see here. It might be too drastic of an angle. Let's hit the juice and see what happens. I don't know if you guys saw that, but that pulley is loose on that shaft and worked itself out. So let's work on that. So it appears as there's a keyway. Let me find my Allen wrench. I'm going to take that set screw out. A little oil on it. Drop the keyway.
After making this video, I realized that I did not actually have to put this pulley back on the motor shaft the direction that I took it off. That keyway can go through that shaft the entire distance. So in essence, I could actually take that pulley off, spin it around, and get the diameter of the pulley grooves lined up with whatever I want on the drive pulley, so there's not such a drastic angle on the belt. I don't know if you noticed that or not too. I put that pulley back on lopsided somehow, so I'm having to take it off and get it straight so it doesn't wobble. It was wobbling pretty bad. Alright, if you notice, that's much better. So I'm just trying to get the belt back on here so I can test everything. I've had everything taken off and put on so many times. I'm just trying to test it now to see if I've got it working right. And you can't see it off screen here. You can't see what I'm doing, but I'm unplugging this and plugging it back in every time in between, so I don't accidentally turn the power on that switch. I'm not really fond of the location of that switch. So I
really don't care much for the shield. I think all it's really doing is dust protection, which is not even really doing a good job of that. If I had something larger here, it would kind of be almost touching in a way. I need to figure out a way of strapping that down. See if that's too drastic of an angle.
It's hard to see from my angle, my camera angle here, but I have the belt on the smallest drive coming off the motor and the second on the drive shaft.
Well, I think this is spaced correctly now. This works, locks. It's exactly what I was trying to do. I got this tightened up, got that tightened up. Let's put the shield back on. Of course, it's a crappy design. It's not really doing anything. I need to just cut that. So I will say that there's a couple things I don't like safety-wise. To put that shield back on, you have to take the belt off to get the shield on, and then you have to, now you're going to have to get back in here and try to get that belt back on with the shield in place, which is kind of difficult.
After making this video, I realized that I'm making this shield ordeal a little bit more complicated than what it needs to be. The complaint that I have is that whenever I had the shield off and I was moving the belt, I can't put the shield back on with the belt in place on both pulleys. So basically I have to take the belt off, put the shield on, and then figure out how to get the belt back on. But in reality, all I needed to do was put the belt on the drive pulley, and then I can lift the weight off the motor and slide the belt back on the lower pulley, the motor pulley, and it's really not that big of a deal. I just really wasn't thinking it through all the way whenever I was recording the video.
Almost completely on the other side of the machine, so you're not hitting it accidentally. So I'm going to unplug this. I'm going to try to get that belt back on. If you guys can't see. Alright. And then there's a couple of keeper screws down here at the bottom. And there's one back here on the bottom. Alright. Shield's in place. Everything's back on. That rubbing noise is the belt because it's at such a drastic angle. It appears everything's working. I might move that belt over one more slot just to kill that rubbing noise a little bit, and maybe try to turn something. I might have to learn a little bit more about this. I'm not exactly sure what this is for. If any of you guys know what that's for, let me know. Let's try to work on something. So I'm going to end this video here. I appreciate everybody watching. This will be part 1 of this lathe fix-up video. I've got part 2 coming already. And here's a picture of what I will be making in part 2. And I appreciate all you guys watching. If you don't mind, give me a thumbs up, like the video, subscribe if you haven't already, share, leave a comment if you want to. And I'll see you on part 2.